So, moving along our panel is from my right. We've got Alex Leonov from Mack Trucks USA, David Kirsch, who is from American Motors, Dirk Nick from T-Mobile, a very interesting component. This whole discussion will be what connectivity bring to climate connectivity in the future. And then right then we have Arthur Swami from General Motors. So, having introduced each individually, Alex, can I ask you to tell us a bit about what your job function is and how you see this evolution in the experience?
Sure. Service manager. Service manager for Mack Trucks and Volvo Trucks. Better now? So my responsibility is developing and deploying apps services that leverage and monetize connected data. So I work on identifying, evaluating, and bringing to market new services for our medium and heavy duty trucks, both diesel and electric. And so in-vehicle experience has some benefits when it comes to heavy duty trucking. So that's something that I do talk about today. Look forward to the discussion.
Sorry, we've got technical issues.
I just want to say very quickly, I think that's going to be a very, very fascinating thing to look at in this session. How does the evolution of the experience differ between commercial vehicles and passenger vehicles? So, David, over to you to pick up the management.
Can we try this?
Yeah, let's try that one.
We'll try that. Hi, I'm David Kirsch. Are we good now?
You're working.
I'm at American Automotive, and my team looks at new technology for the vehicle. We're responsible for software development and strategy around the in-vehicle solutions. That's customer-facing solution. And our goal is to bring to the customer things that help them with the drive, help them with owning the vehicle. We want to meet the customer where they want to be met. So we'll talk a lot about that. We'll talk a lot about that today, about how we meet the customer with their expectations and still meet our business requirements and still meet the evolution of software.
I'm almost afraid to try.
Yeah, I know.
Good. Great. Hey, I'm Kurt Niner, and I'm a product group at T-Mobile for Business, specifically focused on the automotive and autonomous sectors. So we typically work with the major automotive OEMs, EV startups, autonomous players, to really understand their requirements for in-vehicle designs. Talk about 5G, talk about things like speed, reliability, customer latency, what the impacts will be on some of these broader trends around electrification, software-defined vehicles, autonomy. But there's another area that we're also very interested in, for 5G, I think plays a really major societal role, and that's around safety. So I know that we're going to talk a lot about the in-vehicle experience today, but I'm hoping that we can have a little bit of a conversation about the safety aspects that could be delivered by in-vehicle connectivity as well.
I will give it a go. All right. Okay, so I'm Arthur Swami from General Motors. I work for right? Okay. So my job is right? We look at technology, basically consumer technology. Consumer industry. You try to figure out what the condition. There, we look at let's say two different classes. Okay. Now, talking about the interior experience, obviously I'm not an expert, but I talk with enough experts in the company, and with the mic perspective of the position. And what I have learned is that technology is out in the cockpit. And what I call is the kitchen sink syndrome. Okay? We've been putting in technology, we needed to, we need another sign, another icon, another sign. But it comes to a point where overwhelmed. So what do you do, right? And I would say follow the mic and see what's happening. Everybody uses only 5 functions in microwave. But the microwave manufacturers, they give a bigger and bigger, panel with all these features. So less is more. Can we think of that when we think about our experience?
That's a really good point, Martha, and certainly overload, sensory overload, would be an aspect of safety. And how do we deliver more into the vehicle in a way that's still safe for drivers? I think it's really interesting to look at the reasons for wanting to invest in a better experience for the driver, and that there's probably quite a big differential in those reasons between a commercial vehicle and a passenger vehicle. So, Alex, could you tell us a bit about what is important in terms of investment in a new experience? Who's driving? Who are your customers? Who are your product definers for a new experience in commercial vehicles?
Very good question, Nick. So in commercial parking, we're looking at 2 different personas who are making the buying decision, right? So it could be a driver who is the owner operator who owns the truck, but in most cases it would be a fleet manager. So they may have slightly different priorities when it comes to investment decisions. Fleet managers particularly focused on productivity. So what they want is to maximize the uptime of the truck. And of course they also focus on safety. They want to minimize the driver's distraction. And so, and fleet managers are the ones who really drive the new investments and the new technology. So now you see more trucks with infotainment systems inside, but the apps that you'll find there are somewhat different than what you find in your average car. So instead of iHeartRadio or Google Maps, you'll find some very specific apps that are made for trucking and fleet management. So you can't use Google Maps because you need maps that made for Class 8 vehicles, which are heavy-duty trucks. Right? So you don't want to drive on a bridge that doesn't support an 80,000-pound vehicle, or you don't want to go under the low underpass. So also other apps can be focused on safety, on load management, transport management systems. For example, toll payments, way station bypass. Those are categories that are completely foreign to passenger car market.
So presumably, what's much easier to do in a commercial environment is there is an easier return on investment case. If a fleet buyer invests in some new functionality, they understand how to measure a kind of productivity and financial outcome from that. So that presumably makes the justification for some of this investment much, much clearer and much easier. Which I guess is not the case in a passenger car, David. Why don't you take the mic and we'll cut out the data.
Thank you. In the passenger vehicle, I love hearing about this industrial vehicle, fleet vehicle, because it is so driver-centric. They're trained, people are paid to drive this vehicle. The passenger side is very different, right? So we all hopefully drove here today or took an Uber and all those situations, that technology is there. And it's there, it could be distracting you. But our goal is to meet where that customer wants their technology. So we've had some platforms in the last couple of years that have really proven to help us. Because I don't think there's any OEM that can build all of those things. We need to find partners. So we have some major partners that we have with Apple, with Google, with Amazon. These have been great partnerships. All those technologies have launched in our vehicles. And what they've done is they've allowed us to build on top of those platforms. We get the basics to try to address the basic needs of the customer. 2016, we launched CarPlay and Android Auto. Those are projected from your phone, and maybe you've used those. They're really popular with our customers. Why? Because the customers already enroll in them. They already know how to use up the applications because they're from their smartphone, and they bring those to the vehicle. So it's a great experience when we can not have to teach the user, the driver in this case, how to use iHeartRadio, Spotify, or Google Maps. This last December, we launched our 23 Honda Accord with Google Built-in, on top of the Android Automotive system. And that brings Google Maps this much more engaged experience. It brings voice through Google. But most importantly, the Play Store allows for more third-party developers to comment and bring that content that they have. Things that they know best. They might be Android radio, they might be parking, they might be something else. But it's hard because we have to keep addressing this customer that is changing all the time and not really reading the instructions. I mean, I don't know how many applications I have that have an instruction manual. They're very few. Exactly.
How do you measure return on investment? I mean, what is your outcome? Is it a sense of well-being and glow that the driver has? You have to invest millions of dollars in a particular direction for new enhancement. How do you know if it's worked?
So I think there's traditional sources like J.D. Power, and we can look at that about problems. And there's J.D. Power does a lot of executive tech review to say, oh, this vehicle's great at this experience. But it comes down to feedback from our customers. It comes down to analytics on what people use and survey tools. And at the end of the day, we're using these platforms to enable us to have a broader set of features and keep the investment at a reasonable core level. That foundation is important. The foundation's working, we can start building on top. Now a lot of our cars come from the factory enabled with telematics. They have that ability, they have data right off the dealer's lot, so the person can get in the car and can drive away. And that's important for us. We can see how the usage has been, we can see the benefits, and our customers are very vocal. They tell us, hey, we don't like this, or we do like this, or this is my favorite part. So we get a lot of feedback in those ways.
I want to kind of start from where Alex left, and obviously he's talking about Class 3 to Class 8 vehicles, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. And but we also have a light-duty fleet business, right? And what I want to point out that traditionally the mindset is these are for work people. Okay, we can just sell bare-bone vehicles, okay, not a whole lot of amenities. Right? My point is that particular perspective is changing right now, you know. And what we see is that the contractors and all those, they are oftentimes they're independent businessmen, and the interior of the vehicle is also their office at times, and the entire digitalization that's happening in the delivery business is also coming into the vehicles. So a vehicle is also now a logistics hub because they need to keep track of all the things that are going on. So I think going forward, you know, even the light duty fleet business will be experiencing significant change in the interior experience, where you have to bring all the benefits of connectivity, all the new user experience, all the user interface to basically facilitate that aspect of the business for them. That we need to keep in mind. And we obviously have a dry drop division which is geared towards out of the market. But from an HMI and user experience standpoint, I want to kind of make sure that we're not forgetting that part. Traditionally, 10 years back, nobody thought about UX and HMI and user experience, interior experience for those class of vehicles. In addition to all the other segments we talked about.
I definitely think that we are going to spend some time in this session talking about the creation of the third place and what's going to happen when we move to level 5 autonomy. Obviously a huge inflection point for every vehicle to move the driver and everybody in it from being active to essentially having this new third space, so I definitely want to come back to that. Very quickly, Arthur, you started by talking about distraction and risks. We're talking about how we add new functionality to a vehicle that the driver will appreciate and then feed that appreciation back. How do you do that without it becoming, as you said right at the beginning, a blaze of icons that people have to learn, functions that they need to get their head around? How do you do that so that they can learn safely and use the vehicle safely while still having loads of extra functionality?
Right, and obviously that's probably the crux of everything that today's interior designers are working on, right? One of the things, there are several things we can say, but I'll just be brief. So one thing is, inside the vehicle, traditionally we had one button for every function, right? And if you go back 10 years, 10 years or so, there were premium cars where in some cases we counted there were 100 plus buttons and switches. Obviously. That is certainly not where the industry is going. We are coming back to a more simplification because to make sure that consumers are not overwhelmed. And one of the paths that we all are taking is virtualization, right? So again, we don't have 100 buttons anymore. Everything's or to the extent possible, many things are in the screen. But again, the point that we still have the crowding problem, it doesn't go away. In some cases it deteriorates because now I have multiple layers, menu levels to dig into a particular functions, right? So it's kind of a different challenge, in the virtual world. So that's something we need to, obviously we are working to fix. I would say the idea here is less is more. How can we have less interface to provide more easy functions? Okay. So, and we can talk more about that later, but let's pause and see what
Give me a springboard from what you're saying, because I agree with you, this is a challenge. We have all these things in the vehicle. And it makes me remember about personalization and how that's changed, because we see personalization now as being different than it was. What was it 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we got our first smartphone? What's maybe one of the first things you did? Well, there weren't a lot of apps, but we might have changed the wallpaper, right? We might have changed the way the buttons look. That was personalization, make it my own. But today we see it different. The features being available for a user, the specific feature that's right for them, maybe that's more personalization. Our customers saying that it's great that I have all these things, but I really want those 5 things that Martha was talking about. I want the things I use more. And let's make it easy, let's bring it to the top. That type of solution is something different. That is it an active learning solution? It can be. It doesn't have to be that complicated. We've had it with CarPlay and Android Auto because I brought in my Pandora, my Spotify, what I had. But as we get to the embedded space and get more capability, whether that's a vehicle control feature, whether it's asking for information, there are certain things that each of us have. Everyone wants to be that top layer? Yeah, I think so. They've always done that. You can maybe boost yourself to that top layer, but that doesn't help the customer. If we go back to the user at the end of the day, the top layer is the stuff that they're using all the time. Oh, I really like this radio. I really like this station, right? Or I use maps in this way. So we have to look at it because it's not only just about features, it's about safety at some level too, right? We want to give the customer those solutions in a way that they know how to use them and allow them to focus on the primary events driving. So.
Yeah, I just want to add that, that safety and driver distraction is particularly important for trucking. When you drive an 80-pound, 1,000-pound vehicle, you don't want to be distracted. So a lot of fleets actually request to disable Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in trucks. I know it sounds wild, but yeah, they just want drivers to focus 100% on their task.
No fun. Gosh, that one's much more going on it. No fun for you then, keep your eyes on the road. So we started to talk about safety. Obviously, the vehicles had a lot of safety functionality added to it within the vehicle. I was driving a vehicle yesterday, had one of the sensors to tell that I was drifting lane, which is new. But there is a case now, isn't there, for more of that critical safety information coming from outside the vehicle?
Yeah, there is, and that's a really good point, Nick. I mean, cars have become increasingly more safe for the passengers of the vehicles, but at the same time it's becoming increasingly more dangerous for what we call vulnerable road users, for pedestrians or cyclists who are sharing the road with more powerful vehicles that, as we've been saying, have more and more functionality built into them. And as a mobile network operator, right, we're very cognizant of the whole distracted driving argument. And people who are using their cell phones in their car, people who are trying to learn how to use all the functions, while they're doing 60 miles an hour down the highway. So what we look to do from a safety perspective is how do we provide redundant layers of communication to the driver about potentially dangerous or deadly interactions. And this is where we get into technology like cellular vehicle to everything, C-V2X. And I mean, for those of you who were at the AT&T keynote this morning and you heard the partnership that they announced with Haas Technologies, so it's a great partnership. And Haas is a company that is really looking to provide a solution that lets you know when an emergency vehicle is approaching and being able to get that alert to be able to take action. But we want to take it even a step further than that, right? We want to be able, and we're working with forward-looking cities around deploying infrastructure in the cities that can detect when a pedestrian is crossing a mid-block crosswalk, or detect when a pedestrian is in an intersection that maybe needs a little bit more time to get there, and be able to understand that and using our network, send alerts to the driver of the vehicle that, hey, there is a pedestrian up ahead. And that driver may be doing something they're not supposed to be doing, but getting an audible alert to let them know that there is a critical event happening. We think that can eventually lead to safer outcomes and saving lives.
So that's an interesting point you make there, because I think a lot of, as we head towards autonomy, a lot of the assumption is that the vehicle will be responsible for the data collection and the autonomous driving in itself. And what you're saying is you think that is much safer when it's also getting a stream of data from other data capture points along the road, but it needs a solid network and infrastructure to do it.
Yeah, I think when we get to a world of L4 and L5 autonomy, I mean, that's the nirvana, right? I mean, because a car that's driving fully autonomously is not distracted, it's not drowsy, it's not drunk, it's 24/7 and it knows what it's doing, right? So that's the ultimate objective of where we're going to get to. And I do think, and again, I'll go back to the presentation that we saw this morning, where I think the prediction was maybe we'll have 20% autonomy by 2030. I'm bullish on autonomy. I think we're going to get there a lot sooner than that. I think there's, and this gets into an AI discussion and how quickly AI is advancing. And if you look at what it takes to make a vehicle autonomous, the real world has more degrees of freedom than any other type of application. There's weather conditions, there's road conditions, there's road closures, there's road construction, there's the behavior of other vehicles, there's the behavior of other pedestrians, cyclists. All that takes a lot of there's a really variable inputs into what's called autonomy, and AI is going to be the technology that gets us there. So, we're working with autonomous players. We're trying to understand what the network requirements are to start offloading some of the autonomous functions like perception, prediction, path planning, control from relatively expensive onboard compute to more of a cloud-based distributed computing environment to make that the processing of that information and running the algorithms a little bit more cost effective. So, but I do think that when we get to an autonomous future, yeah, that's where we want to be. But until then, there's interim steps around being able to enable things like cellular vehicle to everything, alerts and messages to drivers to make it a more safe environment.
Awesome.
Everything you said, I totally agree. And I'll go back to the safety point that as we are adding more and more safety features into the vehicle. Vehicles are certainly becoming safer. In fact, if you look at statistics, the fatalities from vehicle-to-vehicle crashes actually have gone down. But if you look at the broader full statistics, more people are dying on the road. So the safety is not vehicle safety. Safety is everything safety, people safety and road safety, right? So just coming back to the why pedestrian deaths are going up, I don't think I've seen any specific studies, but just anecdotally, there are more people walking on the streets, right? Whether it's post-COVID effect or not, cities are becoming more pedestrian friendly, but that basically also means that pedestrians and vehicles are cohabiting in some of the same areas, same roads, right? So suddenly, there are more things to be done, not just making the vehicles safe themselves. So I want to come back to the interior of the vehicle because that's kind of the whole topic here, right? And I think Alex, you touched on that topic when you said, hey, some of the fleet truck drivers, they get fatigued, and I think that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, so driving behavior monitoring.
Yes,
very
so
important.
that's
So
exactly
make
what
sure that there are any safety events like driver distraction.
Right.
Yeah, so that's something fleet managers want to monitor.
Okay. So I'm going to bring up another topic, which is actually trying to impact the distraction of the driver by monitoring the driver. And so inside GM, for example, we have used cameras for slightly different purpose. We have a hands-free level 2 autonomous driving with Super Cruise, and there is a camera monitoring the driver. But the purpose is that when we're driving hands-free, we are attention state on the road, right? And so that we have for many years now. That particular idea actually can be and should be, and we are discussing that as well, to a full range of drivers, not just drivers who are trying to drive a particular autonomous capability, hands-free driving, right? But every single driver, so that their behavior can be monitored, right? And this is not about surveillance. This is really about understanding the state of the driver and coming up with appropriate interior alerts and controls so that he or she is driving safely. I think that is something the industry can do today, and we should be doing.
Martha, do you see any pushback from the drivers? As far as the driver-facing cameras?
I don't know that, but obviously, whenever the topic comes up, there is a fair amount of argument on both sides, right? And again, is there privacy issues? Are we surveilling? Or is it too much monitoring? And in any of the discussion, my personal opinion is that this is not about. In fact, driver monitoring is the wrong term because this is not really about monitoring in that sense. It's really about understanding the state of the driver so that he or she has in any way he or she is incapacitated from safe driving. Can we help them? Can we mitigate that situation with appropriate support and alerts and controls? And it can be many ways. It's not just about I'm checking my Instagram or Facebook account while driving. That's obviously something pretty bad. But then there are other bona fide reasons when people get fatigued, people fall asleep, and they make bad things. So I think there's a whole range of situations where I call driver is incapacitated, and not making the appropriate decisions or safe decisions in driving. And there are ways to help the driver by trying to understand the state of the driver. And yes, we have to use devices like cameras or something else, some of the sensors, but I think that we should not look at that as a monitoring and privacy aspect. And I think I particularly believe that consumers are always we are consumers too. We are always very flexible if we understand what exactly we are giving up and what we are getting in return. All of you in older days, every time a JD Power survey or something comes out, there's a dollar stuck to it. You take the dollar and then maybe I can sign a few things because I know what I'm getting. Giving some information away, I'm getting something in return. So I think that's kind of a very good pro, and I think that can definitely help putting in some of those safety systems in the vehicles.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, and it's very important to communicate the purpose of the driver-facing camera, because truck drivers actually is about 80% against it currently. One driver said actually now he had to be conscious of picking his nose in case someone is watching. But on the other hand, driver-facing camera helps to exonerate drivers in case of an accident. Fleets, they face sometimes, actually quite often exaggerated claims when there's a truck driver involved in an accident. So if this is handled properly, and communicated well, I think drivers will be able to accept that. It could be just event triggered, or it could be policy, for example, that those recordings are going to be accessed only by particular people, like counsel, only in case of an accident, for example.
But that's a very specific case in a commercial vehicle with the driver who's essentially under contract. And you said that there's a very clear ROI, if you like, that the driver-facing camera may exonerate the driver and thus save the trucking company a huge payout for an accident that wasn't actually their fault.
It could be $1 million. They call it nuclear verdicts.
Yeah. I do wonder how long some of this will survive the first subpoena on some data where the driver is not that keen on having that information released. And I think that's going to be a very interesting moment about how much of that is recorded, persistent surveillance versus real-time processing. And certainly, as somebody who sits kind of on the European side of the GDPR stuff, this feels like it's very much in the danger zone of GDPR type things.
There's another, I think, beneficial use of in-vehicle cameras, and that's the ability to monitor what's happening inside of the car when you're not in the car. So think about how many children, your kids, they get, their parents, for whatever reason, forget them in the car, right? And then you've got an overheating situation that could be a tragic situation. But having a camera that can detect that there is a child in the car and then proactively alert the parent that, hey, you forgot your kid. I mean, that's a good use of in-vehicle.
Genuinely happened to a British Prime Minister and his kids in the back of his car. We've talked a lot about safety there, and it's obviously a very important motivating factor. It's a point of difference in a future vehicle, how much safer it is, how many more safety functions can be included. What other functions do you see drivers getting excited about that are enabled by either better on-board processing, because you've got more processing power, or better connectivity, where essentially what you can do is move to kind of thin client, thick back-end service, where as Kirk's already described, you can do a huge amount of processing in the cloud, but you can rely on it being in the vehicle very much in real time. So aside from safety, what other features do you feel like wow drivers in the next couple of years? Pre-autonomy. Let's talk about autonomous driving as a separate bracketed idea.
I can start, and this is my personal opinion. I'm not a gamer, okay, but I study the numbers. Gaming industry is much bigger than Hollywood, okay, in terms of dollars. And there are initially, it is my perception was gaming is for the kids, okay, but those kids have grown up in the process. Many decades have gone by. So I think right now gaming is something a lot of people enjoy, okay, and bringing gaming into the car is actually not a bad idea at all, okay. Now, not for the driver. Let me clarify that. Yes. But even and I have spent years in past trying to figure out what should be our what you call rear seat infotainment is, right? So typically it meant in old days you will have a Blu-ray player and you'll have big screens in the rear. Okay, so that was the rear seat infotainment, right? And what myself as well as my colleagues, what we have concluded is that every family, and by the way, that Blu-ray thing was really for premium vehicles, large premium vehicles. Okay, so every company who has large premium vehicles, they put these rear seat infotainment systems. But our point was that every family at some point or other have children, okay? And some of them play games, some of them enjoy others. We should put something in the vehicle that's
natively embedded.
Natively
embedded, not things that people have brought in. They're not bringing in their Switch, they're not bringing in
It could be natively, it could be streamed, that I'm not talking about the how part of it, I'm just saying the what part, right? But introduction of gaming as part of your in-vehicle infotainment, I think is a very natural extension of where the society is today.
So your next car comes with Apple goggles. $3,499 on the sticker price.
The point is, there is a huge amount of, consumer desire that we have seen, okay? That will appreciate that in a safe way. Let me continue to qualify that. I am not talking about drivers. And oh, by the way, this is not necessarily for one market or the other. In China, for example, we have seen that, especially the new age car owners, many of them, let's say parents, they have children who are extremely busy with their school activities. Start their school, then they go to after school karate, after school math, after school this. Parents drive them. And then in between the classes, parents are always sitting in the car. So again, it goes back to the idea of car as third place, living space, okay? And that's why they would like to enjoy some of the same entertainment that they are exposed to at home while the car is static, it's not moving.
Is this also the EV charging scenario where you've got an EV, you have some time where you're going to have to sit and charge, and that's your entertainment time?
Yes, that's correct. So while the vehicle is not moving, they do want to, and this is a definite desire that we've seen from Chinese consumers, for example.
I think, I don't disagree, there's a lot of opportunity here to do different things. And I think that from our customers and our direction, it's really to enable the systems for what might come next, right? Whether it's the VR goggles that we saw earlier this week, and maybe those could be integrated. Maybe it's allowing a game while you're sitting and charging your vehicle or refreshing while your kids playing soccer practice, something of the sort. But the real trick here is to be adaptive and to work with the technologies that are out there.
So what you're saying is get the platform right, but allow fluidity of the apps that sit on top of it.
I have worked in the rear entertainment system a long time, and we've wanted to put all these great things in there. And at the end of the day, what was it? It was a DVD player. We played movies. It wasn't very interactive. We've had games, we've had these things. But what we've enabled better is when we have the platform there, that we make a great customer experience that hopefully adapts over time. We address the new things that are coming out. And I think, and this is not just for us, I'm sure it's very similar for part of this research. If we are able to allow the customer to do what they want in a safe way, whether it's the passenger or the driver wants to have an entertainment, they're much happier. And for us to build all the bespoke systems and to not leverage these partners that have great platforms, it would be too challenging on our own. So we want to have the latest and the greatest, but we can definitely bring our partners with us.
So latest and greatest is a real challenge in the vehicle environment because the hardware in the vehicle environment, we change our smartphones every 2 to 3 years. I change my car every 15 years. I mean, I have an FM radio in my car. How do you deal with that disparity in hardware refresh cycles? Is it about just get the basics of the base right and then make everything else float on top of that? Is that the push more into the cloud, less into the vehicle type solution?
The cloud's great. The cloud, we can offload a lot of these things. We can bring features in different ways.
Yeah.
So the way we're doing it today, right now, is that we are building some applications for the vehicle. We want the customer to have updated applications that help them with their environmental demands. But leveraging our partners to bring new things in. Anyone can do it. Anyone can be a developer. And if the company has a business for that, they can bring that in. Whether it's video content, whether it's games, whether it's a new mapping solution for on-road, for off-road, whatever that might be, parking. The software has become complicated, but the systems have become kind of standard.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this is the great appeal of things like Android Automotive and Apple CarPlay is it gives you some standardization. Now, whether or not you want to use those specific platforms, the concept is standard layers into which you can build applications.
It is. We want to have those standards there, but also how we do business has to change a little bit too. Mm-hmm. So today we look at the customer different than we did in the past. We want to give them customer services. We want to help them with things that are important to them. That isn't always added with the car.
So that's really interesting because that relies on connectivity. It relies on that. So car owners are used to paying consumables for their car. They buy the gas that gets the engine going, they put oil in. Are they ready to buy connectivity as a consumable for their vehicle? That the vehicle literally won't run properly without connectivity.
Connectivity is so important, but I don't know if they're buying the connectivity. They don't see it that way.
No, they don't. But in a way, they don't really buy the gas. They buy the thing that makes the car go forward. Yeah.
I think that's right. But if I can give a service to my customer that works on his Honda Civic, and then he goes to his Honda Accord and it also works there, and it follows him, we see that there's future value there. We see there's future value in the car being connected, and us bringing the services that are helping that customer, no matter where he goes. It could be the next vehicle you buy, or you could have several vehicles. So by tying it to a user, and not necessarily always tying it to the VIN, we've created opportunity that didn't exist before. Now I don't have to buy connectivity or this feature, maybe for one car. I can buy it for me as a user, and I can have multiple cars, because it's only me using it.
So you own the connectivity. It's your service
Well,
connectivity.
in this case,
rather
the
than-
feature. I might own the feature.
The feature.
Charge
Okay.
me.
The feature has connectivity behind it. So
Well, it brings up an interesting question about, what is the business model? And I think when you said, are consumers ready to buy connectivity, I don't think that's the right way to frame the question. I think it's what does connectivity enable, and are the consumers ready to buy that?
yeah.
So it gets to, can you offer, as an OEM, can you offer a compelling package of services? And maybe it's, real-time navigation, or streaming Spotify, or, some type of, a service that connectivity enables, but you're not selling it as connectivity. So maybe you get a bundle of services and you're paying $10 a month for that. But it's just because the connectivity is there that you're getting those services. So it's changing the mindset of what you're actually purchasing.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. The connectivity is an enabler for the functionality. But is some of the functionality that we're looking at getting so inherently required to enjoy the vehicle that those
Well, you're
functions
also
will become a consumer.
at some point you're selling convenience, right? Because when you start thinking about things like real-time navigation, right? When you are getting ready to do your morning commute or go someplace, and the connected vehicle knows that the route that you normally take is now super congested because there's been an accident, and it automatically routes you to a different way that you would not have gone on your own, but you now trust that direction because you've done it before, it works, right? So that's something that has value to me as a consumer.
So we talked about Alex's very obvious ROI in the commercial sense. That's a kind of ROI for me as a person to get some of my time back, as a passenger vehicle driver. I'm conscious that we've got a few minutes left and I want to have time for questions, but also I do want to get to level 5 autonomy. Complete game changer. We have all, I think, been told we're going to gain a third space, and to an extent that third space has been painted as a leisure space, but I think you're right, Carl, that you touched on it might not be a leisure space, it might be a productivity space. How do you plan for two very, very different tracks of experience? You've got the pre-autonomy, where the driver really can't do a great deal, and you've got the post-autonomy, where the driver is essentially capable of doing everything that the passengers do. How do you manage those two development tracks?
Stab at it. So I think there is between those two tracks, like the fully driven, human-driven vehicle and a future time when they don't drive anything, there's a long gap in between, right? So what we are seeing today is that, and again, that big progress is being made every day into making level 5 autonomy a reality. However, it's also a very long path, right? So in between, taking those ideas and making the vehicles safer, which is still humanly driven, is going to be something that we will live with for a very long time, right? So for me, the idea of discussing what happens when everybody is driving an autonomous vehicle, that you go, push the button, and go to sleep, that's not hypothetical totally, but it's probably not very relevant in my timeline, which is roughly about 8 years, like 2 vehicle life cycle, right? But bringing those ideas continuously to bring it, to make the vehicle safer is, I think, something we as an industry should continue to focus on. Okay, bringing those ideas and making it safer.
Because they're a continuous thread between both
Yeah.
non-autonomous and autonomous driving.
Yeah. The idea is democratization of safety, meaning every vehicle is safe. You know, what we call 0, 0, 0, 0 crash, 0 congestion, 0 pollution, and that I think is the right road to pursue.
Okay.
It's very true. Safety is a focus for all the OEMs. It definitely is for Honda. We have a goal in 2050 of 0 fatalities in or outside of a Honda vehicle. That's great. And we're working towards that. Everything has that as top of mind. But your question, I think, a little bit different. I think that we have passengers in the vehicle today. In the future, there might just be more of them.
Okay.
It might be everything. So if I can address the passengers today and the driver, and then we continue to progress that, we can see what the person wants. It's not different than we're on a road trip. Who gets to drive? Dad gets to drive. Dad takes the 8-hour stint. What does everyone else do? They've got a pillow, they've got a book, they've got their iPad or whatever it might be. I think those use cases are the same. I don't think they change so much in the future. Because we're all just humans. We want to have a comfortable space. We want it to be easy to use. And if we try to meet that, then I think we've met most of the demands.
Okay. Alex, pure autonomy in commercial vehicles doesn't that just mean no drivers? You don't need drivers anymore. The unions have views on that, but
Actually, autonomy is a priority for trucking, because I don't know if you heard, there's a major shortage of truck drivers. I saw estimates of 7,000 and 9,000. But there's, regardless, there's a major driver retention problem. So nobody wants to be, especially the younger generation, they don't want to spend weeks or sometimes months on the road and not seeing their families. So autonomous driving is extremely important for especially long-haul trucking. In old trucks, for example, already operates a few routes, autonomous routes in Texas with Uber Freight, for example. So we'll see a lot more developments, especially in the trucking space.
interesting. We've heard a lot of information. I think we've had some really interesting discussions about how we see things going forward. We have a few minutes left. I believe there's a roving microphone if anyone. We don't have one. I have the roving microphone. I have to roam. I'm not going to roam. I'm going to give this to Lisa. Otherwise I'll just talk that. If anyone has any questions for any of our panel, please put a hand up. I can see your name badge from here, Shirley.
Shirley Johnson, and I'm with AutoTech. I have to tell you, this has been one of my favorite panels of the day. One thing that I noticed that you all touched on and you all agree upon is the value of first-party data. Because without that, you're not going to be able to create that safer environment. When you spoke about property, you spoke about monitoring an individual's driving habits. Well, right now, the insurance companies offer that to the driver as putting like a little mechanism there for a discount. And they sign up for it because, like you said, there's something in it for them. And that data is being collected. So I started thinking, I'm wondering, is that someone you would collaborate with to get those statistics to help you create a safer, experience in the car for individuals? I mean, that's just a thought. And even with, when you were saying, personalization, first-party data, that's what the personalization, that's when you find out what functions do the driver most gravitate to. Me, myself, I love the heads-up display. It's made me a safer driver because I'm not looking down at the speedometer. So there's those little things that the OEMs are doing to make it more, not just more convenient for us, but through that convenience, safety is actually peeking through as well. So thank you guys for that. But first-party data, I see that as a really good ingredient to the road to the solutions that you're all looking for. This is some real good stuff. Thank you.
Thanks. any other questions? I see a gentleman at the back there with a salmon pink shirt, unless the light has really got into my eyes.
Yeah, I agree with the other speaker. Just a great panel. I think the question you might have been leading towards with respect to services in a vehicle might be along the lines of servitization, where you're actually paying for functions of the vehicle, like heated seats and cooling and so forth, which is probably a separate conversation. But the question I had, I think, was really more the part that was in aviation and in other, I would say, like high-stress environments. There's a concept called task loading. When you're designing features and additional features with more data, more stimulation in the cockpit of a vehicle, what, in your view, because you're kind of thinking a few years ahead, is where's that threshold? You know, how many you know, like vibrating seats or vibrating steering wheels or pings with you know, ambulances approaching is too much for the driver? And from a design perspective, over evolution, are you suppressing more of that input to automate it and then surface the features that are really more like for a driving experience, which could be not driving at all? Not getting it into autonomy, but still where the driver maintains control of the vehicle. I mean, what's the, from an engineering perspective, what is your thoughts on that? What is the right direction to balance control versus information?
Yeah, okay. So in the operational design, there is something called Yarkes Dodson curve. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Basically, it's like a bell curve, and it's basically a curve which says pressure versus performance. Okay, and the idea is, you know, we do the best when we are neither underwhelmed nor overwhelmed, right? So underwhelmed, overwhelmed, and in between so that's the, how do I keep the driver in that perfect balanced state? And I think that's the challenge that all of my HMI colleagues are really working on, right? So a couple of ways that I know they are kind of some of the routes they are taking to solve that. First of all, you know, originally I said that the one that you are alluding to is we have a lot more alerts and signals and all kinds of chimes and everything. We are getting more crowded, right? Now there is a purpose for all that. We need something, we need another alert, we are adding that, right? So the purpose is not in question. What is question is what we are discussing, or I'm pointing out that there is an opportunity to step back, how I can make less is more and kind of make sure that it's not overwhelming the consumer, right? And one of the things, again, my HMI colleague tells me that drivers really don't want to be told, like in your face, you should do that. You know, it has to be a lot more seamless, okay? And how you do that, I'm just giving you a principle, I'm not giving you an answer, to be honest, right? How do you make something a lot less obvious, you know, and so that I'm not overwhelmed and blasted with a whole bunch of signals and vibrations, right? I think we are, and that is exactly where I started with, that our cockpit is still, the basic design of the cockpit is still really the last century design, where, you know, we just kept adding things. So here, I think we are at a point where you need to step back and figure out how do we make the cockpit less overwhelming and try to bring the driver at that particular peak of that Yarkes Dodson curve. But again, I didn't give you an answer. I just said this is where we should go.
So I think what we've learned there is the optimum driving situation is to not be overwhelmed or underwhelmed, just thoroughly whelmed. And that is important drive. Medium whelmed. I'm afraid that is all the time that we have, even allowing for a few technical glitches at the beginning. So I'd like to thank Alex, David, Kurt, and Arthur for contributing today. And thank you for joining us.